on Facebook. Start start recording. All righty. Well, thank you guys who are joining us for the first time on National Blind Sports Week, and thank you to those of you who are return customers for National Blind Sports Week. We're so excited that you guys could join us, and we just want to let you know that this is being recorded live. This is being recorded and is posted live on Facebook. So for those of you watching on Facebook, hello, and also be sure to post your questions in the comments so that we can get to those and that Jake can answer those at the very end in our Q&A. And if you were in the Zoom session, be sure to use the Q&A function at the bottom and we will get those questions answered as well. But in the meantime, introduce yourself to other participants so you can get to know everyone on the call in the chat section. So without further ado, I will turn it over to the head coach of the women's national goalball team, as well as the national resident athlete team, Jake Churkowski.
Thanks, Kat. First of all, good morning, good afternoon. For some of you, maybe good evening. And thanks for stopping by today. So my name is Jake Churkowski. I am the head coach of the women's USA national goalball team. I am also the resident athlete coach out here in Fort Wayne, Indiana. What I want to do today is talk for maybe 20, 25 minutes about the sport of goalball itself. I'm going to give you a little bit of the history, a little bit of the ins and outs, equipment, court, et cetera, go into a few of just some of the basic philosophies of the game, some teaching concepts, how to access goalball throughout here in the United States, and then some of the up and coming things that we're looking to do, both the national teams and USABA are looking to do to help grow the sport. And that is something that I'm going to ask everybody in the room right now, if you can just kind of take a second and really anything that I can do, Coach Keith Young, the men's national head coach, anything that we can do to help you in your mission to help grow the sport of goalball, please let us know. That's something that we really enjoy doing, and this opportunity to slow down a little bit and focus on some of the other aspects of goalball. We've really highlighted some cool ideas that we have coming up for the future. But without further ado, the sport of goalball, it was created in 1948. I'm sorry, 1946. To assist in the rehabilitation of veterans who had sustained vision loss in World War II. It was used as an orientation and mobility tool, but it was also used as a source of recreation. It got its origins in Europe, where it's still incredibly popular today. Most of the tournaments we end up going to are typically in Europe. It became a really popular therapeutic sport in the 40s and 50s moving forward. In 1976, it was a test event in the Paralympic Games, and the men participated in the 1976 Paralympics, and that was in Toronto. In 1980, it became an official Paralympic sport, again, only a men's division. 1984 was the first year that it hosted both a men's and women's competition, and Team USA earned gold medal on both sides. Still to this day, the only nation to ever get a double gold medal in the sport of goalball. And World Championships started shortly after in 1978, and they run every 4 years in the every 2-year cycle of the Paralympic Games. The first World Championships was held in Austria in 1978. In 1982, it was hosted just down the road here in Indianapolis, Indiana, and a former USABA long stay, Jeannie Scott, was pivotal in helping to host and run those games. And from there, the USA also shared a lot of success in the World Championships as well. So It is now played in over 100 countries across the world, and it is the only sport that was specifically designed for athletes who are blind and visually impaired. A couple of unique things about goalball: it is a Paralympic sport. It does not have an Olympic equivalent, meaning it was not a able-bodied sport in any sense of the word. So it has no Olympic equivalent, it makes it unique in its own right. It does present some challenges in recruiting and in kind of identifying just what the heck goalball is. So it's definitely purely designed for individuals who are blind, visually impaired. Another cool part about the sport itself is based on the equipment and the environment of the game. It's easily accessible for individuals regardless of vision or not. And so if I wanted to go play with the athletes, I would put on some eye shades and go play. So it's a very, very inclusive setting, which is a pretty unique thing, I think. The game is played on a court that's 9 by 18 meters. It's about the size of an international volleyball court. The court is made up of tactile zones. And I'm going to see if this works. I'm not sure. We're going to give this a shot. But what I'm presenting right now, and it's all backwards, of course, because I'm just putting it onto the camera, but I'm putting a view of the court which can be taken off of the IPSA website. We can get you that website information. But the court is made up of 6 9 by 3 meter sections, and you have string with tape over it to present tactile feedback on the court. That's really important because everybody that is playing has eye shades on that are completely blackened out so that it takes away any sort of visual advantage. So the sport is purely an auditory sport. The ball that we use is about the size of a basketball, and it weighs just under 3 pounds. It weighs 1.25 kilograms, and it has bells inside of it. So if I just spin it around a little bit, you can hear that it makes a nice loud auditory source. That's used in helping to track the ball in the motion. I was talking about eye shades. So this is a type of eye shade that is made by a company called Goalfix out of Great Britain. And these go just over your face, over your eyes. This particular model, the Eclipse, has a small little bridge that goes over your nose to make sure that all vision is taken away. For many, many years, and still to this day, a real easy adaptation for those who want to get eye shades but may not have $50, $60 to spend on Goalfix, you can just get ski goggles. These are just standard Scott ski goggles, probably $6, $7 with a clear lens. And all we've done is taken tape and taped over the outside so that no light is being able to penetrate. As we move forward, the questions that are popping up, I'll be able to answer those later. Kat gave me very strict instructions that I'm not supposed to answer any questions right now. So I'm going to try to follow the rules to the best of my ability, but I will be able to answer that question later. Some other equipment that we use in our sport. We use knee pads, elbow pads. So this is what's called, it's actually a softball sliding pad. This is made by a company named Trace. And that gets affixed over your knees, and it provides a little bit of shin coverage. But any ordinary volleyball knee pad works just fine. The reason that you need knee pads, and here's another version. I'm showing 3 or 4 different types of knee pads. Most of them are specifically designed for volleyball. They work just fine for goalball as well. This is a pad by McDavid. It's basically just a very small sleeve pad, maybe 6 inches in length. The pad depth is about 1/2 inch or so. These can be used for knees or elbows. So if you're running a clinic, it may make sense to buy knee pads that are kind of universal. That way, if you have a variety of people, different shape sizes, whatnot, you can get a lot of equipment for a good value. if you're somebody who wants to play a bit more competitively, take the time to figure out what type of padding is going to work well. So you've got your knee pads, you've got your elbow pads. Other people wear hip pads. So what I'm holding up now is a pair of basically compression shorts with padding that are sewed in. Padding goes around the hip. These are designed for football, so they also have padding on the sides. Completely unnecessary for goalball. The key part of the padding for hip pads in goalball is that you have good hip coverage. So the padding on these are about 1/2 inch to 3/4 of an inch thick. Something that's really cool about goalball is you don't need a lot of gear. You need some space. You need a court the size of a volleyball court-ish. But other than that, knee pads, elbow pads, eye shades, and a ball, and you're ready to go. We do use goals for competition that stretch the width of the court, so the full 9 meters. But in practice, in a recreational setting, in an educational setting, goals aren't totally necessary. All right. Regarding other pieces of equipment, it's up to just personal style or selection. But the shoes that we typically advise, volleyball shoes, some folks like to wear wrestling shoes, some folks like to wear indoor soccer shoes, some folks will wear basketball shoes. It really depends again on the availability of what your options are and what you prefer. The key is you want to have something that can provide good lateral support so that you can have nice good lateral movement, enough traction that you're not slipping and sliding all over the place, enough feedback that you can use your feet to feel the lines on the court. Again, trial and error. If it's the more casual the setting, the less important, a specific type of shoe is. But again, it's just good information to have for those who are interested in starting the game. There is a Facebook group called USA Goalball, and they do a great job. And it's mostly made up of athletes and coaches here in the US, but they do a great job of responding to even the most simple questions about the game. And that's a great resource for those of you who just have a casual question and you're not sure where to turn to. So they, the folks that run it do a great job with that. And I know the community of goalball athletes, coaches, support staff, whatnot, they enjoy chatting with new folks and are happy to answer any questions. So we talked a little bit about the equipment needed. We talked a little bit about the floor itself. We talked a little bit about the rest of the environment. A couple other things that you need when you're working in a goalball environment is silence. When the athletes are on the court, it is imperative that the environment that you're working in is as quiet as possible. Again, we spoke about the ball having bells, and the bells are used for auditory tracking of the ball. And one of the hardest transitions I had from the world of football or baseball, where I came from, to trying to coach goalball, was that the aspect of trying to maintain a quiet of environment as possible. Those who know me know I like to talk quite a bit. So it was a fun challenge, but a necessary piece of the component. Now, from the standpoint of the fans, something that I think is really exciting. When you're watching a goalball match, when you're listening to a goalball match, the anticipation that is built up by not being able to cheer or make noise while the game is in play actually builds the anticipation and the excitement, so that when a goal is scored, your team makes a great play on a penalty shot or something, the crowd goes absolutely incredible. We had our qualifying tournament last year here in Fort Wayne last July. The IPSA ranking tournament was here, and it was nice to play in front of our home fans, and they were loud. They were real loud. And when we did well on the court, which we had a nice tournament, both on the men and women's sides, it was absolutely phenomenal to hear the crowd just go nuts. So those were some of the the neat moments from that. But anyway, I'm digressing as I always do. With the game itself, the sport is a 3-on-3 sport. You don't run up and down the court. And for those of you who have signed on to this webinar, at 1 o'clock Eastern time, we're going to have a scrimmage. So I highly encourage you to come back and watch the scrimmage. Reason being is because it is a rather obscure sport, it's really hard to put all the pieces together in a description until you're able to visualize or auditorily get the feedback that a scrimmage setting will provide. So I encourage you to come back and check that out. We'll be having that on later. But the game is a 3-on-3 sport. The athletes, like I said, don't run up and down the court. They stay basically within their team area. And the team area is made up of 2 of those 9-by-3-meter sections. You have your orientation area and you have what's called your landing area. And the object of the game is to take the ball and in an underhand motion, you roll the ball towards your opponent's goal in the attempt to get the ball into the goal past your opponent. I don't like to use the term roll. It just doesn't provide the proper description. At the international level, at the elite level, the athletes are throwing the ball 35, 40 miles an hour. That's giving you about a second to a little bit less than a second of reaction time. So it's an incredibly fast-paced sport. Offensively, you have 10 seconds from when you get possession of the ball to get the ball and return it past half court. So it's a very up-paced game. A typical match is 2 12-minute halves with a 3-minute halftime. And in a 12-minute match, you usually see close to 100 throws per team. We can bring 6 players to a tournament, but we can only play 3 at a time. We have 4 timeouts. We have 4 substitutions to use during the match. There are about 1,000 other little intricate rules and regulations, which all that information can be found on the IBSA website, which IBSA is the International Blind Sports Federation, and they are the controlling federation of the sport of goalball. And they can provide the rule book, they can provide some of the brief history and whatnot as well, diagrams of the court for those interested in that. Defensively, when your opponent has the ball, you are listening in to figure out where the ball is, and your ready position has changed throughout the years. You're in some sort of a modified stance where you have at least one knee on the ground, hands on the ground. Some people prefer to start leaning on their hip a bit. And again, these are all things that you will be able to observe during the scrimmage. Kevin Broussard is going to be doing some play-by-play. So I'll ask him to describe some of the ready positions that the defenders will have. Defensively, you hear the ball coming at your goal. And in a diving motion, you're going to dive out onto your side with your hands and legs completely extended, face covered by your hands, and you're trying to make a brick wall. The concept of the sport, in essence, is very, very, very simple. Throw the ball as hard as you can on the ground to try to get it past the goal. Defensively, get in front of the ball. Some people say it's like reverse dodgeball in that sense. There's a lot of comparisons to bits and pieces of other sports. And again, that's what makes it very, very unique. The thing that I really enjoy, I love the pace of the play. I love the aggression of the play. Because anytime you have somebody throwing a 3-pound ball at 35 miles an hour, creates a heck of an impact. But what is really unique and something that I really enjoy from the coaching standpoint is the strategy involved and the strategy that the game frame allows. You can have different types of offensive movement, offensive play, similar to any other team sport, whether it be basketball, football, volleyball. You can pass back and forth to your opponent with your teammates, as long again as you're getting that throw off in 10 seconds back to half court. You can sweep around different teammates to create a diversion, and there's also different styles of throws. Hard, smooth, fast is a very common throw, but more and more teams are finding that being able to put skip onto the ball, bounce onto the ball, different types of spin onto the ball are very successful ways to create an offensive attack. There are certain sections of the court that the ball needs to hit in order to be a legal throw. And that's where some of the limitations come in. So if my offensive team is throwing the ball has to maintain contact the floor in or before their landing area. And then once again, in the two middle sections, which are known as the neutral area. If the ball does not touch the floor before what's called the high ball line, which signifies the end of the landing area, it is a penalty situation. If it does do that, but it does not land in the neutral area, it is also a penalty situation. The first is called a high ball, the second is a long ball. Any penalty that is committed creates a penalty throw situation where one defender has to defend the entire court for one throw. There are a variety of other different penalties, not getting your shot back to half court within 10 seconds. Any excessive noise once the start of the throw has been established. Coaches are not allowed to speak during the flow of the game. Any coaching that comes from the bench during the actual while game is in play, it will result in a penalty as well. Anytime an athlete touches their eye shades without first getting approval from the official creates a penalty, and there's quite a bit more. Like I said at the beginning of this piece, this is a real brief kind of taste of some of the aspects of goalball. I'm getting a lot of questions that I'm just seeing real quickly on the bottom of the screen about grassroots organizations, different types of teaching techniques and different tools. So I have about six more minutes to go. And so what I would like to do is kind of finish the very basic intro and then go into some of those pieces. Here in the United States, there are approximately 20 to 25 goalball clubs that are providing opportunity. There are a lot more individual groups throughout the U.S. If you have questions about where the closest club is, you can contact USABA and they will be able to get you that information. We're in the process right now of actually making kind of a goalball map that will be interactive, that you'll be able to go to the USABA website and find the closest local club. Goalball is also played at a youth level. There are some organizations throughout the United States that provide youth opportunities in goalball. Several schools for the blind also have goalball clubs and programs as well. And then, of course, the national level teams who participate in the Olympic or the Paralympic and World Championships, regional championships, and then friendly tournaments around the U.S. I know I'm bouncing around a little bit. I'm trying to give little bits and little tastes of all the different situations. What's cool about goalball, in a way, once you kind of discover the sport itself and you find some interest, maybe you attend a tournament or you attend a practice, what you're going to find is this whole world that has been thriving successfully since the 50s and is a very, very tight-knit
do is create more opportunity for more club expansion. And as we're able to do that, the more clubs, obviously, the more opportunity that we'll have for play. So that is something that is a short-term goal for us, because there's just not enough opportunity right now to reach as many interested athletes as we have. So we're getting into that. Now, the game itself is one piece, but the training really is the fun part for me. Here at the Resident Training Center, we're very, very fortunate. We have a strength and conditioning coach. We work with a dietitian from the USOPC. We have athletic trainers at our disposal. So we have all of these things embedded. But training for goalball is not different than any other team sport. We have our strength and conditioning component. We have strength phases both in the weight room and then with body weight opportunity. We do a lot of plyometric activity. You need to be explosive, you need to be strong, you need to be quick, you need to be flexible in order to play at your very, very best. And so we make sure that we train all of those areas to make sure that the athletes are getting everything they need there. When it comes, there were some questions about drills, and we can get into a few of those in a little bit during the Q&A section. But creating drills is no different than any other sport, right? So you're taking one concept of the game. So within the offensive concepts, you have throwing, you have movement, you have passing. Trying to break down each one of those things to create a drill is really kind of the key. The concepts of throwing, first you have just basic throwing technique. All right, it is an underhand style of throw. A standard approach is about a 5-step throw. Some people say it's similar to bowling. I always hesitate to use that example, because when you bowl, when you take your final step with your lead leg, your back leg typically goes behind your lead leg. And in goalball, that's not something that you want to do. You want to be able to fully get your hips through, similar to a softball pitcher, similar to a spike in volleyball. The power and the velocity from the throw is going to come from your legs and come from the explosion through your hips. So taking the components of throwing, which there's 50 or 60 different movements in a goalball throw, similar to a shot put or a discus or any multi-chained movement. And the key is being able to do a task analysis of the individual from start to finish and see where there are gaps, see where there are breakdowns in that chain of movement. So those are really some of the key issues when you're just looking at the actual component of the throw mechanically itself. Okay. Working on different styles of throws, that comes much later down the line. Speed is great. Putting spin on it is great. But if you're not accurate with your throw, you're going to have a lot of problems. No different than any other sport. Accuracy is a key component. That is my 30-minute timer. So I'm going to talk a couple more minutes about this, and then we'll be able to open up for questions. But accuracy is something that I don't think gets focused on enough at the younger stages. And really, in order to be accurate, you have to know a couple things. The athlete has to know what their body's doing. So basic body awareness is such a key component. So you cannot do enough basic body movement with athletes, getting them to understand what their body's doing in space. And once an athlete has a better idea for how their body is moving in space, then the corrections needed in order to fix some of those errors much easier. When you're working with athletes with different levels of vision, it's really going to be about what's most comfortable for that particular athlete. There's nothing wrong with asking how they like to be taught. What, would they like, a physical tactile representation? Would they prefer verbal description? So really getting that rapport with that athlete, however they're going to most comfortably learn, is going to take precedent to any learning that's taking place beyond that. So that what if that comfort level is such an important piece, because it's not just visual learning. I'm not demonstrating a skill and the athlete just visually inputting all of these motions and then moving forward. So we have to establish a working relationship with the athlete in order to understand what is the best way to teach. So once that body awareness is established, understanding the court itself in two concepts, court orientation and court awareness. Because we have these tactile markings on the court, they are fixed marks. The court doesn't change its size. It doesn't change the environment. So what we can do is teach different court orientation skills within the team area. If you have the use of goals, actually using the goals for orientation as well. But once the athlete understands where they are on the court, where their body is in space, then you combine those two to help create an accuracy situation. When you're working on defensive form, it's about being able to put if I'm learning a blocking skill, it's about the ability to put my body into the proper form. And once that is established, once my ready position is established, how do we transition from our ready position into a blocking position? And it's the same process as if you were to be breaking down the chain of throwing. It's that chain of movement that we're trying to analyze and assess to see where are the gaps, where are the breakdowns occurring. Is it an actual physical breakdown of an athlete not understanding how to manipulate their body into a certain position? Is it a lack of communication, a lack of understanding where the body should be? So it's really essential for the coaches to understand what is causing the lack of success. We can talk drills in the next time we meet, and that's the hope that both Coach Young and I have, is that as we continue to move forward, USABA is going to start doing more of these webinars. And the reason I just wanted to give you kind of a taste and bits and pieces of some of the game itself is the hope is those of you who are interested in some of the higher level technique, we can create specific webinars for offensive theory, defensive theory, specific drill implementation, and really how to move forward with some of the specific things that people are looking to learn. So like I said, just give you a small taste of the entire piece of this puzzle. And then from here, Kat will be able to set up more of these opportunities. So I'm going to pause right now because we had some great questions that were being thrown up on the screen, and I was trying to read them as I was trying to talk. So I'm going to let Kat kind of back us up a little bit, and we can go into some of the questions. All right, so unfortunately, Kat, I cannot hear you at all. So I want to make sure.
How about now?
Bam.
Perfect. So thank you so much, Jake, for sharing your love and obviously knowledge of sport of goalball. And I know you mentioned and did answer a lot of these questions kind of sprinkled throughout the presentation.
I know I cheated, but I only sort of answered them. I can get in more detail with the specifics.
That's fair. Do you want to take the question of what are the coaching strategies to teach the fall to catch the ball to a beginner athlete?
Okay, so can I actually read them?
Yep, they're in the chat.
Okay, hold on. Okay, I got it. So goalball is played on the floor. So that's first things first. you're going to find out real quick if the athletes have any interest in a sport like goalball at all, because it is down and dirty, on the floor, highly aggressive. So one of the things that you can do is just get onto like wrestling mat material, or something that's a little more comfortable than a standard floor, like a basketball floor or something else. And the ready position, and this is where I wish I wanted to try to be able to get some of these pieces on the actual, while I was on the court, so I could explain them. But a ready position in goalball. So if I'm defending, I'm not going to be standing up. Okay, I'm going to be down on the ground. My hands, both hands are going to be down on the ground. I'm either going to have one knee on the ground. Say I block with my feet to the right. Now, there's a lot of different philosophies and strategies about blocking styles. Some people block feet to the left and the right. Some people only block with their feet to one side. We can get into that again on more advanced talks, because there's theory and philosophy behind it. Different people have different opinions. But say we're just doing a kind of a standard one knee on the ground, and say my right leg, I dive to my right side. So I would have my hands on the ground in front of me. My left knee would be on the ground on my knee pad. My right leg would be kind of off to the side, so that I can use my right foot to plant and push off to my hand side if I block with my hands to my left. Or if I wanted to dive with my feet to the right, I would have my hands on the ground and I would use my hands to push off. So again, this is where goalball gets really complicated really quickly. And talking about it in a webinar is great, but getting out and doing it is even better. So the fear factor is legitimate. I get it. It is an intense sport. It is crazy. So what I would do, depending on the age of the athlete, if you're talking working with younger athletes, I taught in the elementary schools for years. Let's just get real basic, real simple. Let's sit around and let's look at the ball. Let's check it out. Let's roll it back and forth a little bit. If people aren't real comfortable cruising around on the ground, what about floor scooters? Just getting on a floor scooter, and maybe people using their hands to propel themselves, just using a floor scooter. So there's a lot of just the initial getting over on flying around on the ground. So trying to answer that question, because you're not going to be on your feet diving to the ground unless you're defending a penalty shot, which again, if you're talking brand new first time players, probably not going to be going that far. If you are teaching penalty shot defending, where somebody may be actually on their feet, same thing. My recommendation is starting on a padded material where people can at least feel comfortable they're going to be falling on a softer surface than the floor. So very, very good question. Fear is overcome by explaining the safety measures and allowing the athlete to move at their own pace. If you have somebody who doesn't want to do it, I wouldn't force it. It's a hard thing. We want to encourage athletes to go out of their comfort zone, but at the same time, we don't necessarily want to push them to the point where they're losing all their comfort.
Perfect. So I want to kind of mix two questions here. One person asked about the Grassroots Goalball program in the US, and another person has asked about the collegiate status of goalball and if there are any college programs with goalball. So could you touch on kind of both of those or the whole pipeline?
Sure. So Harvey, depending on where you're at, and that would be good to know. We have, depending on the age of the athletes, right, and introductory levels, we do have club programs throughout the U.S. Or if it is a student at the School for the Blind, many of the Schools for the Blind still have their beginning programs. Sports camps for years were a great way to introduce the sport of goalball, and I do apologize. I'm a little out of touch with what sport camps are still in existence, which are still working. I know Dr. Lauren Lieberman later is going to speak about camp abilities. So sports camps are another great avenue for that. There are some clubs sprinkled throughout the United States. Utah has a great youth program. Lakeshore Foundation down in Birmingham does some youth goalball as well. So there's no one program that oversees the entire country. It's just a matter of, based on where you're at, being able to point you to the closest club. And then regarding colleges, that's very, very similar. Some colleges, Cal Berkeley is very involved. Slippery Rock in Pennsylvania is very, very involved. Some of the areas, some of the schools in New York, but that's a program. Portland State University, Jenna Armbruster does a great job out there with implementing sports and recreation. I know at one point Portland State was an active club as well for college intramurals. So that's another situation where it's just kind of based on the area where you're at, where you can access. And I agree that this is something that is continuously our goal, right? Spreading our outreach is something that is very, very important to us. So it's something that is, Coach Young and I, we speak about this a lot, of trying to expand that footprint. And I know USABA is very, very adamant about that. Where can I buy goggles? Okay, so goggles real quick. GoalFix out of Great Britain, like I said, has the pre-made eye shades that are totally blackened out, already ready to go. Buying the traditional just ski goggles anywhere. I would look on Amazon. When you're trying, and again, this goes back to, is it an established program? Is it a brand new program? Depending on where you're at, I can also maybe point you to some different directions. So Kat, feel free if you want to put my email address, my USABA email address out there, so I can give you some more specifics. But the true answer is wherever you can find them. So
USABA also sells eye shades if you wanted to look on our USABA website.
There you go. So yeah, those are the areas that I would look to, and it all depends on your budget. It really does. So depending on what your finances are and what your resources are is where kind of what direction I would point you in.
So we have 2 questions in the Q&A. I'm not sure if you can see those, Jake. But the first one is, generally, do you advise your players to aim their throws at the opponent's corners or aim between the players?
Yeah, that's a great question. Unfortunately, I have another long answer. See, none of these are short. Oh, okay, I read both of them. It depends is the very bad answer, but the truth of the matter, it depends on what my defense is looking like. It depends. So the most basic of offensive theory, I want to take the strengths of my team, I want to find the weaknesses of my opponent, and I want to exploit both of those. So depending on what my defense looks like, how they play, are they bunched in the middle? Okay, sure. Maybe I'm going to try to attack the post. Are they a little more spread out? Do they play a traditional style of defense? Do they play a frontline style? Do they play back on the goal line? There's so many different styles of play, and I would look at the style of play the defense is giving me, the opponents that I'm looking at, and then again my style. So mixing in all those pieces is how I would determine my attack. Now, the most generic answer probably is really simple. It's this: I would go for both. You don't want to just bang one section the entire time. If I'm throwing a lot of gap meaning in between the players, and I'm seeing that defense start to bunch up a bit, and all of a sudden now their post is opening up, I absolutely want to take advantage of that and set up that opportunity. So there's the short-term answer of trying to exploit our advantage versus their disadvantage. But during the flow of the game, what is opening up? What is becoming available? What is the defense struggling with? What are we doing very, very well? So it's a combination of those two. There's not a tutorial on how to tape down the court that I'm aware of. There is demonstrations of, or there's tactile diagrams of the court, visual diagrams of the court available. And I'm trying to think of the best way to answer this. I can, Dan, if you, it looks like your name might be Dan. I can chat with you at some point to give you, because we're running out of time here, to give you a 10-15 minute piece on how what I would feel is the best way to tape down a court. And again, unfortunately, it also depends on how many people are there, what your environment looks like, and so on and so forth. Do I coach in code during play? Yes, or is most of your instructions given during timeout? So no, during play, I can't do anything. I'm completely silent. During stoppages in play, if the ball goes out of bounds, if anytime the official blows their whistle to stop play, I can talk until they tell me quiet, please. I do use a lot of code for specific set plays. I use a lot of code for giving information about what the defense, what our opponents are doing. During timeouts, I'm giving feedback on our game plan, what is working, what is starting to open up. But the cool part about working with athletes for as long as I've been able to work with the national team is most of the coaching, honestly, takes place before the game starts. Once it's in game, it's very basic information. Coach Armbruster, who was the men's head coach or the women's head coach for many, many years, used to say it, once the whistle blows, our job is done. And all we can do at that point is screw it up. But yeah, it's a lot of quick bits of information. My biggest advice to those trying to improve coaching during the game is less is more. You don't want to flood the athlete with verbal information in a short amount of time. Have them try to process that and then immediately go back to playing. So that's where some of the code can be really helpful.
Perfect. Well, thank you for answering all the Q&A questions, both in the session and after the session, Coach Jake. So for everyone else, we have 3 sessions left today, with the first 2 staying with Coach Jake and the Goalball resident team in Fort Wayne, Indiana. And our next session starts in just 9 minutes with the live scrimmage of the resident athletes that'll be coached by Coach Jake and commentary by USABA's own Kevin Broussard. And the next session after the live scrimmage will be the Q&A with some of our resident athletes about what life and training is like preparing for Tokyo and beyond. And that will be at 12 p.m. Mountain Time, 2 p.m. Eastern Time. And after we finish the time with our resident athletes, this evening at 5 p.m. Mountain Time, 7 p.m. Eastern Time, we will get to spend some time with Camp Ability's founder and director, Dr. Lauren Lieberman. So we will catch up with you guys in just a few minutes for the live scrimmage. In the meantime, though, get on social media and let us know how you're spending your National Blind Sports Week or how you plan on spending your National Blind Sports Day, and use the hashtag Blind Sports Week. See you guys in a few.
Bye, guys.